Tonight, we speak to Rita Tukwasa, the Executive Director at the Institute for Social Transformation. The Institute works with women market vendors in Kampala area, Arua, Gulu, and among other places, training them and equipping them. On Newsnight this Tuesday evening, we discuss the plight of market women vendors, especially with law enforcement. Welcome to NTV, Rita.
Thank you very much.
You released a report which we came across on the plight of Uganda market women entrepreneurs,
Yes.
and what the institution is doing to reverse the situation.
Yes.
Just paint a picture for us. What are some of the challenges that women market vendors go through?
Yeah, for instance, the Institute for Social Transformation got interested to work with the vendors. First of all, we picked from the media what issues were coming out, and we realized it was one group that we were not paying attention to, especially to us as civil society. Of course, to government it is obvious. And some of the things that really did attract us was the issue of the violence that they do face in the markets. Of course, violence is a very big issue in terms of workplaces, and especially if you're doing business as a woman, an area which is more dominated with men. Sometimes you need to go an extra mile to break certain stereotypes for you to be able to emerge and do a profitable business. Then the other issue that attracted us to the market was the issue of how do they participate in leadership. Yes, majority of them are in the markets, but through our engagements before we even started working with them formally, when you go to the market and you're looking for who to speak to, men will present themselves first. And of course, the third most important was scanning through the laws that have not been revised and which may relate to women. And of course, the market is heavily populated by women. And the Market Act was one of them, which was last, reviewed in 1942. Yes, the Uganda law reform has attempted, but it hasn't made good progress to be able to make the law, compatible with today's trends in business.
1942 is a very long time.
You can imagine.
Yeah, let's stick with the issue of law enforcement,
Yes.
and how they deal with the market, the women market vendors. In your interaction with these women, what has been the experience with the law enforcement? I know you say you've picked some from the media, but you've interacted with the women themselves. What is the experience with law enforcement?
One, the experience comes from the background of KCCA or all even local governments not coming out to be very clear on what are the policies or the regulations in the market. They are not aware of them. So even when they accuse them to go against the regulations, the women are not aware. Number two, the language that they use towards these women is very indignifying. They label them Bele, Nene, Kapapal, and all those names. And they have a stereotype that they are so very hard and cruel women. So they mount a lot of force and a lot of rudeness to them. The third is in terms of how do they, negotiate for their rights within the market. The law enforcement think there are women who absolutely have no rights, have no voice, so they choose to deal with them anyhow as they may please, regardless on whether they are trampling on their rights or not. Yeah.
There's been a few deaths that have been reported. Recently, I think in August, we ran a story about a woman who jumped into a trench running away from law enforcement, which is very unfortunate. How is your work geared towards bringing harmony between law enforcers and the women market vendors? Okay,
one of the things we've done is start with the women first of all. They need to know their rights, they need to understand violence and in all forms it presents, especially in their workspaces. So when they know, then they are able to speak out. Number two, it was to reach out to KCCA and all local governments where we work to bridge the gap between the officers who are designated, for instance, they are CDOs, the community enrollment officers, the commercial officers, and also deal with the leadership within the market. Because one of the things that is happening is, whereas KCCA, for instance, in Kampala, has a group of men who are law enforcers and are supposed to reach out to these women in terms of enforcing laws, they are also leaders within markets who these women deal with day by day. And KCC also uses them, by the way. Even when they don't appear in the picture, they go through them to be able to correct taxes and to be able to disseminate some of the information they may have. And as I stated, that the fact that many of them are men, that is one, but they are also not aware of what rights of, today, if I'm dealing with a woman, how should I do it? But to cases, I would say also, we recently had a dialogue Kalere and in Nakawa. The women were very explicit. They said, why do you have to use men to come and manhandle us? Why don't you appoint enforcers who are women?
Who are women, yes.
One of the things that came out was that, you imagine like sanitary facilities. Why would KCCA go ahead to parade men to take care of the facilities for the women? And yet they know majority of those who use those spaces are women. So it is very clear some of these things are basics, but also the language. And for me, KCCA should come up. They have a social development section, and I believe they have people who are skilled, and people like us, civil society, we are willing to help. We need to come up with regulations that are gender responsive, that are very progressive, to be able to promote a good working environment for the women and to deal with all forms of violence, so that the women spend their time in a joyful manner, not worried about who is going to grab my boob, who is going to pat my butt, and more so, sadly, if it's a law enforcer.
So it's just a simple issue of respect, if you ask me.
Finally,
Rita, the Institute focuses on training for social transformation. What do you hope to achieve in a couple of seconds, because we're out of time? What do you hope to achieve with the women market vendors?
One of them is to achieve a kind of market women who can stand for themselves, be able to negotiate with government, be able to stand for their rights and take on leadership. Those are their spaces. So they should be able to participate in making the decisions at that level.
All right. Thank you so much. I've been talking to Rita Kwasa, the Executive Director of the Institute for Social Transformation, talking to us about women market vendors and the experience with law enforcement. That was your edition of Newsnight this Tuesday evening. It's time for a quick break. You're watching NTV Tonight.